Hey addicts, welcome back. We are here for Danmachi, Volume 16, spoiler discussion. And man, we're hyped to talk about this. It was hard to do the review without spoilers because this book is like unveiling a lot of stuff we've built up towards for who knows how many volumes at this point. But yeah, this kind of just, if you're new here, this is kind of where we talk about everything that happened in the book, completely unfiltered, totally spoiler talk, and we'll do a little bit of discussion of this volume as well as speculation for the next volume. I don't really know where I want to start off. I guess technically I can start off on one thing just because we've been kind of Liu fans ever since her arc finished up, and when was that, 14 I think? I did find it cool that they started kind of with Syr and Liu like kind of discussing like in open about their feelings for Bella, at least Syr poking that like she knows about Liu's feelings. And I couldn't help but feel sorry for Liu this whole book because she's just so like, she's so dead. Like she just can't deal with the fact that her love's gonna go like unspoken basically for just in the sake of keeping her relationship or friendship intact with Syr. But yeah, there's I don't know, where do you want to start on this? Because there's a lot of stuff between like Freya Familia interacting with Belle for the first time or like Belle's date. I don't know, like I think one of the things, maybe first, Lee, is there was two things we talked about in one of the previous one. I don't know if it was Rapid Fire or maybe it was the last speculation one, but I know we had talked about Belle being forced into doing something by Freya Familia. I always thought it was going to be like Freya was going to like threaten Belle's Familia, specifically like her, to get him to like be with her. But I do love how it kind of took a sidestep. It didn't like make Freya like the bad guy in this. It lets her followers be crazy like they are, and has Hedden actually doing the threatening. And it seems like it's just on his front, which doesn't really surprise me because all of them I think would probably do this. But I love that we got that, as well as getting to see Belle with one of Freya Familia's members in the dungeon. I thought that was really cool. What did you think of the whole thing of like him being like kidnapped basically and then trained for like a week to become a lady killer?
Yeah, that was an interesting part. I mean, we get more intro into it because the book's pretty fast paced. I don't know how many pages it was, but I read it pretty quickly. So that particular part of the story is not super long or doesn't explain a lot, but it was pretty cool to see that. You could see like Hestia's Familia without him, how they were kind of like lost. They kept looking for him, and
yeah.
One of the things that I think was a key part of this is we got to see the real difference between a tier 1 family and where Hestia's Familia is at right now. Whether it be Freya or Loki Familia, Freya mostly just because they're all crazy. That's gonna be a problem, right? Like if you have a conflict with the Loki Familia, you can kind of like what we've seen in previous volumes, they had conflict with them and they were able to kind of get enough forces to try to maybe just like distract them long right. enough to accomplish what they need to accomplish. But you could tell with like the Freya Familia that they're kind of more screwed as far as like how are they going to deal with the threats that Freya Familia has for them in the future.
Yeah, well, I think it's because like Freya Familia's got like literally the best of the best out of the whole city. I know a lot of people will say like, well, Loki's actually, and it's like, no, like, like for instance, like you got the Gulliver brothers, right? And like they're level 5, all of them are level 5, but they say like they're like the equivalent of like a high level 6 or like a decent level 6, and their teamwork is like the best out of the whole city. You got Hedden, which is the white elf sorcerer, and they said like his magic's like he's like the best like spellcaster in all the city. So like, I mean, they got the strongest guy level wise with Otter. So I mean, there's a lot of things that they have to like really be calculating about, because just one of those things is enough to like turn the tide. I think they actually demonstrate that really well, and I liked it a lot where we had the waitresses of the Benevolent Mistress going up against just a couple. Gulliver Brothers I'll just count as like one person so yes, I know the numbers are a little different, but just for the sake of things. But like technically they only went up against like 2, right? You had Hegney and then the Gulliver Brothers. And they get wrecked, and I think they said, like, what? They could hold them for, like, maybe a minute. So, like, Belle needed to get out of there. And the fact that they're able to take them out, and those aren't even, like, their strongest ones out of the 8. Because I think Alan's, like, definitely number 2 in the Familia, right? So I think, like, the tier and, like, hierarchy of powers, like, Otter, Alan, and, like, Hedden. Or maybe, like, Hedden and Alan
I think
together.
The elves are pretty close in power.
Because, like, Hegne's, like... I mean, his ability's, like, insane. I was trying to remember the abilities from, like, the Freya side story, because I know they kind of tease one of those or 2 of those being used in this volume. But, yeah, needless to say, I think that's one thing in the book that I think consistently he's done a pretty good job of keeping the power scaling intact or, in line with the previous stuff. In the anime, it's not as... well, but in the books it's always been great. But yeah, they lead into some crazy things because they're setting up the conflict for Freya next volume, which just judging by like Freya, right? She's not, at least she doesn't appear to be the one that likes to wait. So I'm assuming that at the end of the book where we do get the reveal that she is, giving the okay to her followers to go kidnap Belle and take him by force. I don't think we're going to wait like a book. Do you think? Am I crazy thinking that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say what they're going to do. I mean, they could do. I think that's going to be a major plot in the next book. I don't know if she's going to take this time to fight with the Loki Familia, just to like, because Eyes is not really a threat, but you can tell that like Belle has some connection with her. So there might be some. Let's take over the world first and then convince Belle. But they may just go ahead and kidnap him.
Well, it seems like the easiest pickings right now, because nobody in his Familia is even close to being at a level where they could maybe hold even for a few seconds. I think the only ones, like Aisha, right? Did she level up to level 5, or is she still like high level 4?
I believe.
So like, you could get Aisha, maybe Asif. You could get the Benevolent Mistress people if they're still able to fight after the where we saw them last. But I mean, you can't really, because even though Eyes was helping fight them or like hold them off to buy time for Belle to get away with Syr or Horn, I guess. I don't think in times past, right, Loki has always kind of forbidded them to getting in the conflict because they didn't want like a full-on like declaration of war. So I guess they could always spin it in there where Eyes and maybe like the Amazon twins can like interject to help them. But I actually am really curious to see what they're going to do for like actual fighting. I have a feeling we're not going to get like a lot of fights in the traditional sense. I think they might have to tiptoe their way around, maybe even kind of cave in to save people.
I mean, I would be okay with Belle being captured and obviously like probably built up in the dungeon for a while. Maybe he has to escape deep into the dungeon to try to try to escape from Freya Familia. But let's not talk too much about that. Let's talk a lot about some of the stuff that happened here. So in the first video we talked a lot about the ending. So it's revealed over the course of events that Syr and Horn and Freya, 2 people, 3 people, 1 person, 2 people, 3 people.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing when you first read it, but so like if you didn't get it, it's fine. You're not alone. I had to take a double take because I really wanted to make sure I was saying it right. But I think we basically, between me and Michael when we were talking off camera, I think we got it like squared away. So the original Syr is not the Syr that we know in the series. It is actually a character named Horn that we were faked out in the in like the flashback sequences, both in the Freya side story and in the earlier part of this volume. So technically, the Syr that we saw in that volume, or in that flashback, was Horn. And then you have Freya and Horn sharing the Syr persona, which this is where we get into like speculation, but I think the appearance that Syr has is something that Freya just always had, and it's only when Horn asks to be Freya that Freya suggests this or like has this come into be where they share this form. But because they do mention that she gets that magic when she joins their familia. But and then Freya and technically Horn share the Syr human emotional side that links them in a way where like Horn in a sense gets some godhood and Freya gets some like human essence, I guess, or whatever. So I do actually like the duality there because I think it actually adds some complexity to Freya because we don't really know if Syr in Freya's sense is an alternate personality that is completely separate from Freya's, or if it is still Freya's essence just with human emotions more connectedly tied to it. You know, if she's like still, if they're like one and the same.
Yeah,
in that sense.
That's still like Josh and I were talking about there's probably more questions and answers when it comes to this stuff, but that's okay. I mean, it's something that was just introduced, and it's it's really, I thought it was a really cool way of making this story very important for the future.
And honestly, I thought that was a really intriguing way to make Syr that much more interesting with not really doing anything with the Syr character. You know what I mean? Because it's like, yes, there's certain aspects of Syr that make her like her own person, but at the same time, a lot of the extra stuff is kind of expanded upon, knowing that a lot of it stems from Freya. So it's cool having a character that you thought maybe was just one side. It's kind of funny because it's like it was like a one-dimensional character that immediately had like a three-dimensional persona attached to it. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So one of the things that speculation between Josh and I were talking about is if Freya reverts back to the goddess self personality that we've seen in the past. You know, how is Bel going to deal with that, or how is that going to affect his familia and the people around him? How hard it'll be for him to continue operating in Aurario with that threat there.
Yeah. And how ferocious is Freya going to be in getting Bel now that Syr's persona is locked away? Because it's kind of implemented that the essence of that Syr is, right, or the persona that Syr like Freya transforms into is giving Freya more emotion and in a sense taking away her godhood, because that's what Horn was afraid of, was changing the goddess to be not the goddess that they know and love, and she wanted to save her from that because I guess that in her eyes makes her more vulnerable to not being here anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see that if the Syr side of her is locked up, if she is going to be less, what would you call it, nice about how she goes about things, because I feel like the Syr side of her is in a sense like the more, I don't even know what you call it, like the more negotiable, or like at least like she'll like try to get her way in the most, the approach that will be the easiest for you too. Whereas it seems like she's not really going to give Bel a choice as Freya.
One thing that I like, so there's probably like 6 or 7 things that that we were talking about that was interesting parts of dialogue. One of the things that I think is interesting is Syr, and I think this is, again, throughout the story it's hard to know which persona it is because Horn talks a lot in the Syr persona, or you don't know 100% who it is that's talking. But Horn talks about how, we can't wait any longer, and I think Syr in her Syr persona, that is Freya, talks about how, we can't let this go on forever. So it's pretty clear, I think, that Freya chose a time for this to happen. I mean, she probably manipulated Horn behind the scenes to make this happen because Bel was at a point where she could still control him. I think if Bel was a level 5, like high level 5, high level 6, it'd be harder for her to control him. So it was kind of like, now's the time I have to see if this is going to work. If it doesn't work, now I can still capture him and like destroy his world to make him follow me.
Yeah. Well, and also it probably just makes sense that Freya feels a little bit more rushed now because of the information Ishtar revealed to her before her death, right? Because Ishtar said right before Freya killed her was that you're not going to get the boy because he's immune to your charm, right? which I know like Freya took that as like any other god in Danmachi universe, was it's like, ooh, thrilling. This just adds another level to my enjoyment. But honestly, I kind of do wonder if Freya's a little bit hesitant about what she's going to do if it didn't work. So the other thing that Michael brought up too when we were talking off camera was the fact that we don't know how the odor desire from Freya is going to mix into this, because even though I think it is name drop a couple times in this volume, we don't get really the Freya's persona side of things in this volume. So I think that's something they're going to wait and touch on later, because technically I think in the mainline series that hasn't really been established yet. It has in the side series, but I'm sure they're probably going to have to reintegrate that for those that haven't read that side series. But yeah, there's also the fact that you also have all of the people that technically are in line with Syr that don't know anything. But we were talking about this too, because there's some interactions where, like in Freya Familia, that you assume that those characters know that Syr is another side of Freya, but also there is some dialogue that kind of hints to maybe otherwise. So I think it's hard to differentiate, like, which some of it is like, you know, might be people that don't know versus like purposely like trying to throw off the trail maybe. But I do think that a lot of the lower level Freya Familia members do not know of this and just see them as two separate people. But I think a lot of the people in the Elite Eight are like in the know, because we didn't really see any people surprised by it. And also like, you know, when they found out Horn could transfer into Syr, there's also the fact that Hegni and the Gulliver brothers and Alan could like differentiate between the two. And then also Otter not being faced by Freya's transformation.
Yeah, so there's definitely some people who know and people who didn't know. The other thing, there's actually like many different things to talk about here. Which probably made the book so enjoyable. Not only finishing the end, but kind of just speculating on things. Mm-hmm. So one of the conversations that there's probably 3 or 4 conversations between Syr and Belle that take up a different meaning when you know that it's Freya talking. So one of the ones, I almost want to go back and check it, but it's towards the end. I don't know if Josh remembers this particular instance, but Freya was talking about, I can say that, Freya was talking about, you know, what would he do if I did something bad or I was hurting the people that you wanted? And Belle replied something like, well, I would stop that from happening and also stop you from destroying yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see how that plays a role in what Freya does in the near future. And it's also, you know, how are they going to interact with the Familia in general as we go into a new overarching arc of the story.
Yeah, because I feel like not to get like too much in the speculation side yet, but I do feel like there's one of 2 ways this can go, right? It's like either Belle has to submit to Freya because he knows the force is so overwhelming, or there's a chance that they are able to sneak away, maybe in the dungeon by the help of the Xenos, and lay low for a while and, you know, use that time to get stronger enough so that they can resurface and deal with the issue. But it's going to be really intriguing to see, because this is probably this is the most fascinating like mashup of like things Belle will face, because I don't think he's really had to worry about a betrayal before, in the sense of somebody that he didn't expect, you know, just fully being somebody else. And the fact that, you know, this person has kind of garnered information, you know, like like a spy, you know, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all goes down. I do think there was one thing in the book that I talked to Michael about it, and I think Michael's right that it's just another factor of Freya's power that we just don't know about yet, or at least that's not confirmed in the series. But it was one that made me wonder if it was purposely in there to throw attention off the fact that Freya and Syr are the same person, or if it was indeed something else that's canon that we don't know about. And that is that in the end part of the volume where we see the reveal that Freya is Syr, we see her actually transform from Syr to Freya, right? In one body. But there is a part earlier in the volume where Freya and Syr are seemingly in the same area, right? And we know that they're both there because there's people in the crowd reacting to Freya, and then obviously, you know, Belle's been reacting to everything that Syr's been doing with him. But we know from the reveal of Horn that Horn is only being in the appearance of Syr in the second day of the festival. But this instance where we see Freya and Syr together is on the first day of the festival. So it lies in question. We don't know if Freya has the ability to be multiple bodies, but still the same essence together, or if it is some sort of magic that's like an illusion. We don't know. But I think, Michael, you can explain your theory, because I think it's actually pretty spot on, because I think it explains why the book mentions Freya having the look that she has, you know?
Okay.
But you can remember.
I can remember everything.
Yeah.
No, I think so. There was two issues that we talked about a little bit. So, in the book, there's a couple scenes where the Familia has to split up to protect Syr and Freya. And obviously that's not Freya's like will for them to do. That's just what they always do, is protect her.
Right.
But yeah, that's beside the point. Let's get back to specifically the 2-in-1. So there's obviously the easiest answer that still doesn't really make sense, but some people are probably going to talk about. And I was just thinking about this now. Is that, well, Horn is just transformed to look like Freya, but I don't really like that theory as much, just because we don't have any ability to we don't have any reference point of why they would do that, and then also probably no one in the family would allow that to happen.
Yeah, I feel like they would be like, you're defacing our goddess, you know. Yeah.
So what Josh and I were talking about specifically is how in a lot of fantasy there is it's called like a soul clone, basically, where people can be two places at once, but their emotional core is in one place and not the other. So there's a hint of that in that one scene, because Freya doesn't really acknowledge or have any feelings, any positive feelings towards Belle. There isn't even some hostility or whatever there, and that's kind of her goddess persona. Whereas when she's in Syr's body, she has more human emotions, and that's kind of like her core being. So that could be one possible explanation for what's happening there. Right. But again, we don't really know. And either way, it was kind of interesting, and that kind of core mystery, it leads to a lot of other questions in regards to what's going to happen in the future too.
Yeah, because I think after this volume, the bar has been lifted to basically anything, because I was talking to Michael about this. Like, you know, you have like a lot of fantasy stories that I feel like approach godhood differently, but I think one of the key things that you see in most of them is that, yes, God or demigods exist, but they don't necessarily have the same limits as, or unlimitedness as, you know, what you would normally picture a god. But I think in Danmachi it's a little bit differently, where, like, you know, as long as they are releasing Arcanum, like, they're pretty much omnipresent. At least that's what it's seeming like. So we'll see. I am wanting them to touch on that, though, because I think that is one thing about the book, if I was to critique it a little bit more harshly, is that I had thought right before that moment, dude, what if Freya and Syr are the same person? And then when that scene came up, I was like, well, I don't know, like, would that really make sense if they're in two places at once? But, you know, again, like, we really don't know what the limiter is for gods in the universe. So that's something I do want them to touch on, though, because if they never touch on that again, or they don't explain how that's possible, I'm going to be like scratching my head like, so why was that instance there? Or, like, you know, was it there for, you know, throwing off your scent of the reveal for later, or is there something else to it?
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as, you know, Freya has so much power that he mind controlled the body, and the body which followed Belle on the first day was Freya, was Horn, but Freya was in control of the body, and she was like, she didn't have a consciousness there to to do anything or whatever.
Yeah, because they can probably play on that some more too, at least with in relation to Horn and her transformation magic, because we don't get her death right at the end of this volume. I mean, it's implied that like Alan's there to kill her, and like, you know, they were chasing her to kill her because they, you know, she broke her promise to the goddess, but we don't actually see her death. So I'm curious to see if she will return. Because Freya didn't mention her punishment to be death. It just meant that like she wouldn't see her again or see him again.
What was funny too is that was it Alan who called her like a cult?
Oh yeah, man, what a hypocrite! Yeah, where he's like, "You're just a fanatic." I'm like, "Dude, you're kind of a cultist yourself."
Yeah, like I don't know what we're doing here.
I also thought it was interesting on you know, seeing more of Anya and Alan. It was just a small little thing, but I am curious to see, because there's a lot of connections that other characters have to Freya Familia or ex-Freya Familia members. So I'm wondering, because of the fallout of Syr potentially, or like the idea of Syr being gone, I'm wondering how certain characters are going to react, right? Like, how does Liu react? How do the other waitresses react? I mean, you know, we do know that Anya has a connection with Alan, and then Mamma Mia was the former commander, or like the person that had Otter's position. So like, how much do they know about this? You know, and then like also, how is that going to relate to some of those character relationships? I think that's going to be an interesting thing too.
But yeah, overall, I mean, we should talk a little bit about the scene. So Freya, I'll just say Freya in the Syr persona does confess her love for Belle.
Yeah.
And Belle doesn't know really what to do with that. Originally, when it happens, he understands that it would be easy to say yes, or it would be, or to just ignore things and try for everything to go back to normal. And he's kind of contemplating that, and to be fair to him, he is like 14.
Yeah.
So he is a young kid, and Josh said this, I don't know if he said this in the first video, but we said this privately. You know, Welf has so many good scenes. He has 3 or 4 moments in the book, but all of them are really awesome. And one of the best is saying, well, you need to be honest to her feelings, respect what she's feeling, and also give her an answer that's, you know, that's what you should do. Otherwise, I'd be disappointed in what you've become, basically.
Yeah. I do love the phrasing, too, he uses. It's so badass. He's like, she likes you as a man, you know? I was like, yeah, that's cool. Also, I mean, he's just got, like, sound advice that anybody could take for that situation. I mean, I don't know why anybody would, you know... Because I get where Belle's coming from. He doesn't want to hurt Syr, but at the same time, it's like, well, you're hurting her either way, you know? Like, if you ran away or, you know, confessed...
And yeah, like Belle has an internal dialogue. Well, even if I say yes and like go with this, I'm gonna be hurting each other. You know, each other are gonna.
Yeah, because he doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And I do like how they. It's weird though. Okay, so I love those moments in the book, and I do love the response that Belle gives Syr at the end of this volume. I am curious to see what your thoughts on this, because, okay, so you have I think it's like monologue 5, right, in the book, where it's after I think the main events with Belle and Syr in the hotel or tavern or whatever you want to call it, after they had escaped the boat, and Belle's talking, or it's like a monologue inside his own head of, you know, kind of love, like unacquitted love, you know, like basically what the other heroes had done wrong, and then, you know, how he kind of reflects on that. And I really like the kind of betrayal of philosophy and like thinking that he has in that. And I feel like it's slightly distorted a bit when it references eyes in his confession scene, because I don't really connect those two at all. But the one thing I do kind of find intriguing is that since they've kind of, you know, established that Belle is, you know, he acts his age in terms of relationships and his social norms, because, like, you know, he's still 14 at the end of the day. He hasn't had that many reactions, right? And there's a lot of things of life that he doesn't know. So I don't know in this instance, at least in my mind, maybe it's just rationale as like somebody that is not like crazy about eyes, but I see it as like, you know, his devotion, or like whatever you want to call it, his like yearning for eyes is more so an adoration than love, and it's because of his immature side in that aspect that it's hard to differentiate the two. So maybe in his eyes, he's seeing that as love. And that's why he can't confess to Syr, because he thinks he loves Eyes, but in actuality, it's just admiration for striving towards something that she symbolizes. But
yeah, I mean, I think there wasn't. I'll have to go back and read that and think about it for a little bit. For me, I didn't get an impression that it was only just about Eyes. I think it was just.
No, I'm just.
I think he was being true to himself, and I liked what you said earlier. Earlier on when you talked about how you could see it being something where he doesn't pick anyone, and he's friends with everyone, but he doesn't find someone to fall in love with. I mean, you get the kind of that motif in the cathedral as well, talking about in the cathedral, you probably read the book so you know this, but in the cathedral, I'll give you a short one. There's basically a love triangle with the hero. Because of the love triangle, someone almost commits suicide, and then the hero almost dies, and because of that, and there's like very sad events that the public doesn't know, but I mean the kids don't know, but the public knows what really happened. And Bill kind of reflects on that, so it makes it almost seem that he, in some ways, to be the hero that he wants to be, he may not be able to express his love to someone and be alone with someone. Otherwise, he'd be falling in the mistakes of heroes of the past.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting. Obviously, he's still got much maturing to do in regards to relationships. I think it was a big step here, and we'll see how in the future. How he deals with those who likes him, because clearly there's like 8 other characters that like him at this point. And he did. Oh, sorry. I remembered the scene with Cassandra. Very funny.
Yeah,
very good.
I wrote that down. I was like, dude, that's the perfect way to get like that payoff for that character that I don't think is gonna amount to something. But I thought that was adorable. That that whole setup for like having Hedden like teaching him things, and you got the moment in Rivia where the guy does like the spoof name drop of the title, like, is it wrong to find heartwarming things in the dungeon or whatever. I also love the fact that because I love little stuff like this, and I don't think we get it very often because there's not many times you see Belle interacting with the public, and I think they sort of tried to touch on this a little bit in the Xeno arc, but they kind of, they touched on it, but they kind of stepped away from it at the end of the arc. But I do love seeing people starting to recognize Belle as like a top tier adventurer, or somebody that's like, oh man, you're like well recognized.
What was like the 3 lists he was on?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was leading to. I love it. It's like, I wrote it down because it's like Belle, number 1 on Promising Futures list, number 3 on Marry Into Money Early, and number 7 on the Please Call Me Big Sister list. I was like, what the heck did this come from? But I love that they're, playing into that as like, his like stardom factor as an adventurer. And then I also just love the fact that, Belle hasn't changed for the worse, even despite all of that stuff. Again, we haven't seen that much emphasis on it, so I guess you could say there's not many instances where he could be corrupt in that way, but I still love that they play on it playfully. But yeah, I definitely think, though, that the monologue, if what I glean from it is anything to take consideration for in the future, I would definitely love if that's kind of the case where it's more of like, him just having a relationship with somebody in a non-traditional sense, where like they're not really together, but it's just like, he knows it.
In a family-friendly, non-traditional sense, yes.
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, technically, I think that's what in Bill's mind too thinks of it as well. I just find it funny that they mention Eyes in that moment when I didn't really think it needed to be mentioned to garner like that effect. But I think it's kind of more, now that I think about it from what you said, maybe they did it as just an easier way for the reader to make the connection to the story, to have it more paralleled. Because, a lot of people like to have that parallelness in stories. Oh, real quick though, because we skimmed over it in the review, but I wanted to talk about just like the lore we get from the city, because I thought that was really cool. I love the fact that we already talked about like the cathedral and some of the stuff about the festival, but one of the things I really did dig was concerning the Heroes Bridge, or the Bridge of Heroes. And I love that we got to see different heroes throughout time that's kind of mentioned that Belle looks up to, but we also have what's considered the greatest adventurer, which what is his name, Alan or something like that. It's the person that he thinks eyes might be connected
Albert?
to. Yeah, Albert. That's what it is.
Albert.
Yeah, because I was thinking, hey. But, sorry, I know. Not so great now, am I right? But anyway, I do love the fact that you have the empty space on the bridge, and the whole reasoning behind that is like that Belle kind of puts together after Syr makes a comment to it, or Freya, the fact that that spot's reserved to the very last hero, the one that will defeat the one-eyed dragon. So I thought that was just really cool, and I think, you know, if we actually end the story with Belle's image on there, whether he lives or dies by the end of it, I think seeing that as like the final shot would be really cool. I don't know if I'm just in the minority of that, but I don't know. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh man, that would be a badass way to like bookend the series. But you know, at this point, with Freya's like magic and like the unknowns, she could be the one-eyed dragon. Maybe that's what she would.
Make friends with the dragon to take Freya out, please. We love Dragon. Dragon's good guy, dude. I'm telling you.
The real question
Dragon's secretly good
do
guy.
you think? I just thought about this. Should we lead into speculation now? Have we covered everything?
I
about
think
the book?
it was a great book. Ending was great. Read it if you haven't read already. You shouldn't have been watching this, but read it again if you've read it once. I'm sure it'll be better on a second time.
Oh yeah, and there's plenty of like small moments that are so enjoyable that honestly, over time you probably forget them anyway. So going back, I had that for another series I read that I was just like, man, I forgot like how good like the in-between journey moments are. Classic. But I guess starting off with speculation for volume 17. Holy cow! I just thought of this. And I kind of wonder, do you think, because we haven't seen the Xenos in a while, right? They've been leveling up in the dungeon. We did see them come to the aid of Belle and Liu right after facing the Juggernaut. But we didn't see much of them, right? It was just at the tail end there. But I feel like we kind of got hints that, you know, they're getting a little bit stronger. You see Ween, she's got like a more adult appearance again. So she's kind of grown up too. I'm really curious what their levels are and if we will see that in any kind of conflict with Freya. Because, like we mentioned before, there's not really many like allies that Hestia Familia has that can go toe-to-toe or even last like a little bit with them. So I am curious if we're going to get some Xeno action on the Freya Familia. I'd love to see Astros come back for round 2 for Otter.
So that's a possibility. I just think one thing that I was just thinking about and speculating on, and this is not like, you know, we don't have notes for speculation. We're just kind of coming off of stuff that we think that might happen. Mm-hmm. I think there's two ways. So the boring way is that Freya just kidnaps Belle. I think the more exciting way, if she just announced like to the entire city that Belle is her.
Yeah,
like
her. Yeah.
and
Like he's coming into
like that
Familia.
could say that, or like she's just like, I'm taking Belle. Belle is mine now, and like announced it to the whole. And then because of that announcement, Hestia Familia maybe she gives like 2 weeks or something, or some amount of time. They have to come up with some ways to counter that. They try a bunch of different things. None of it works because they're too powerful. And at the end of the day, maybe Belle does have to hang out with the Xenos, and maybe my man Fells comes out, you know, at a time to help them.
Could you imagine if like we by the end of 17 we had like Belle getting the Freya Familia logo on his back because he had to transition over? That would be such like a devastating loss.
Yeah, that would be very bad for him. But I think So that's part of it. That's part of what could happen.
But could you have Belle go into hiding without Freya Familia in tow? Because I feel like if Belle leaves, will Freya just leave Hestia Familia alone, or would she not try to use them to get him to come out? I don't know, because I feel like the Syr side of Freya would not do this, because she seems like she genuinely loves Belle and like wants to try to do like accommodate to him. But on Freya's side, I don't know, especially now that we know that Syr's side is locked away, at least temporarily, you know, because you got to imagine that like Freya has had this Syr side of her kind of probably influencing how she goes about helping Belle, right? So in times past she's been pretty good about it, but without that maybe being a factor, could it be a little bit more heavy-handed than that? That's the real.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably Belle at the beginning of this conflict will make a thing like, hey, we can fight and I'll, whoever wins. In regards to, if I get captured or whatever, you can take me and but you have to make sure my familia is safe. I think that's probably going to be a deal towards the beginning of 17. So that, it's more, I think it's more interesting if Freya doesn't just take their familia hostage. I feel like that would be kind of one-dimensionally boring.
Well, I think it also it speaks volumes of the authentic nature of her love, right? Because I don't think from what we've seen of Freya's character towards people that she desires, right? I don't think we've ever seen her do something like that, right? Like, for instance, every time she's gotten a new follower, whether it was one of the Elite Eight or somebody else, I don't think we've ever seen her do offer an ultimatum where they had no choice, right? It was always like a loving gesture, at least to my knowledge. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, in a manipulative way. I mean, we have different. I think we have a little bit different views on what happened in the side story in regards to that. But yeah, there's no ultimatum in a sense that I'll kill your family unless you join. I don't think that's something like that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice. So one of the problems not really a problem. One of the concerns that we have and we still have is that there's a big level difference between Belle and his familia.
Yeah.
And that would probably be hurt even more if Belle got trapped in the dungeon by himself, but I think it would be very interesting for character development, where Belle, maybe if he spends 2 or 3 years or he's not heard of for a while, we could do a time skip and we could have people level up and him be stronger and continue with the story. Yeah,
that could be a good possibility. You know what I just thought of too? That I don't know if everybody would be on board. I don't even know if I'd like this myself, because this is just off the cuff like Michael said before, but I think maybe one direction would be cool, because we've talked about how it would be really neat to see a journey outside of the city, whether that's for a quest, whether that's for some other reason, something similar to maybe Volume 8, where there was Hestia was captured by Ares and they had to go out and retrieve her. If we have something of the effect where maybe Freya Familia is out, kind of like what they were when they were trying to find Syr. They were scouring the city, and because her familia is so powerful, even running into one of them could spell fatal disaster. Maybe instead of the dungeon, because it is kind of it's not really feasible, right? Because Hestia can't go in the dungeon without the dungeon retaliating, and even then it's they could hang out with the Xenos, but I mean, I feel like staying in the dungeon long term is just kind of detrimental to your sight and everything like that. Also just the what would you call it? The the psychological aspects it would have, and the fact that they've already said that pretty much anything could happen in the dungeon. Adventurers kill other adventurers. Freya Familia's talked about killing other Freya Familia members if it wasn't for the aspect of their goddess knowing about it afterwards. But so maybe if the dungeon is not a viable option to go, maybe they turn their sights and go outside the city. And I think this would probably be cool too, because maybe we could learn more about the dragon, maybe tease a little bit more of that. We could touch back to some locations that we saw in the side series. We don't know technically how many years has passed since Freya went out last in the city to talked about Allie, right?
Yeah.
But if it was relatively soon, maybe we could touch back with some of those characters, or at least see what Freya Familia impact had to another nation.
It's a good dragon. I'm telling you, man. Dragon is a good dragon. Okay?
Yeah.
He's a big boy, good boy dragon.
Yeah, but I think you could have the same thing where you said the time skip. You could still have that aspect there, but maybe it would be kind of cool to see some other.
There has to be some sort of deal between Belle and Freya that happens that changes the aspect of the relationship now. So whether it be a thing where he's got 3 years or 2 years to make a decision, and she's like, okay, you get to be in the dungeon, or you have to leave the city, but in 2 years you're mine forever. Because that's kind of what Freya has done with people in the past, right? Mm-hmm. made a wager that she knew she was going to win, and then when she won the wager, she took advantage of the people or had them join the Familia. So I feel like that is probably going to happen somehow. Now, I don't know how the offer is going to frame it, what kind of wager they're going to do, if it's going to be something that if it's going to be something related to his Familia or something like Belle has to do in a couple years. Also, I think it's one thing that's interesting is like it's not like she can force Belle to do like obviously she can force Belle to do stuff, but she can't like force him to like her. And I feel like even now there's some tension there. Even he's starting to understand or feel something is wrong with Syr and Freya Familia. So I feel like open hostility is not going to get what she wants, which is probably one of the reasons why Horn at the end of the novel was like, haha, it's not going to work.
Oh, yeah.
Like, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to change. And you don't need, Odor's not going to change you, whatever. So, I don't know. I think there's going to be some sort of deal in Volume 17. I don't know how it's going to be. Now, maybe that's later on down the line. But I don't think we're going to have much calm before the storm. With what the author put in the end note and kind of how they ended the novel very abruptly, I don't think there's going to be 3 months of peace.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like there's so many loose threads, not in a bad way, but just like, things that he can touch back immediately that we were kind of left in the dark in. We don't know how Belle reacted to Syr taking his news of, his answer. We don't know what happened to the Benevolent Mistress employees because they were left in an alleyway bleeding. They're alive, but we don't know like what that circumstance is. We don't really know how prepared Hestia Familia is, because I would assume that Welf brought them up to speed after he heard it, Belle talk about it. But still, the fact that, if this is happening like a matter of hours or like half a day or day later, like, do they really have that much time to prepare for the worst when they probably assume it's just that's the end of that, So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think another thing, too, is I think Belle's not in a really good position because he does look at the best in people. And because he's got like kind of almost like a friendship build with Hedden, sort of, or his master, as he refers to him as, I think that's probably going to be also another wake-up call because I don't think if he's looking at one of these members to, for like solace against Freya, I don't think
it's going to work.
It's going to work out. Yeah, he's going to have a rude awakening on that.
It is funny that this isn't speculation, but it is funny that the Dark Elf is like an
anime edgelord.
Yeah,
yeah. Like what's it like? Isn't it like edgelord in the name of his title or something?
It's like literally like Dark Edgelord or something.
Yeah, I know.
Which I'm sure that was translated from Japanese to mean that, but that was funny.
Yeah, it's probably something otaku or chibi
or
something like that. Yeah, I love how unassured his self is until his like magic unleashes, and then he actually becomes the embodiment of what he thinks.
There's a lot of people with split personalities in Danmachi, man.
Yeah, I think it's just like half the universe being crazy, though. I mean, it would be kind
a lot
of
of people are freaking crazy, dude.
Yeah, I think. You didn't do a shout out, but you got to shout out our boy Fells for providing some magical items. I thought, okay, this is part of the video we upset some people. But I did like that aloof and also chase scene 1,000 times better than I did the one for Loki Familia when they did that. Are you in the same boat as that? Where they kind of did the, pull the fast one on him? I liked it a lot. I think it probably made more sense, right? Because, one, you have one of the heads of controlling the Familia members purposely dispersing his men in the wrong area, so it's more believable in that sense. But then you also have the fact that I think the people they actually pulled the wool over their eyes from were lower tier in the Familia, right? Too, so Belle's probably more evenly matched on that front. But it does make you wonder what other magical items does Fells have hiding.
And will that lady or guy, I don't know if it referenced, will that person have a grudge against Belle for taking the items for a girl?
Yeah. I did love the fact that it implied that Fells has like walked up in the city, or at least has connections throughout the city. So that's intriguing. Maybe there's more like safe houses around where Fells can kind of help them out. Maybe we'll see that played into the next volume. Who knows? I think. I guess one last thing, because we'll try to wrap this up so it's not too long. But do you think this arc is going to be one book, or do you think they're going to stretch this out to a couple books? Because I feel like this is such a big conflict and such a cosmic shift. I said that completely wrong, excuse me. But it's such a shift in the story that I think it could have potential to be big. But I don't know, since we kind of established that they've already gotten the setup out of the way, maybe they could finish it in one book. What are you thinking?
I think it kind of depends on the general direction for where the author is going to take with the series. So if he sees the series ending in 20-25 books, maybe it will be one or two. But if it's going to be... And we've seen this in the past where most of the things were resolved, but there's still, some items that are affected in the future. So if that's the case, it may be one book. I see this probably being two, though. It could be similar to what happened with the Loki Familia and Xeno arc, where it was almost three. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I don't see a setup book as the next book. I see the next book having a lot of action in it and some decisive things. I also think that it would be fun if Belle's the only one who refuses to wager with Freya in any way. He's just like, nah, I'm good. Okay, so there's two ways that could go. I would love it if it was that, but I would also equally love it if he was like, all right, let's do it. I'll do it for my familia. And he actually, because they already insinuated this in the casino arc, but I love the fact that Belle's luck skill is so damn high that he can literally just like outluck any game that he plays. So maybe that's Freya just like taken aback, but like, what? I'm like the god of gambling and you just fucking destroyed me. Yeah, so I think that would be really cool. Kind of have a callback scene to Allie and Freya playing their little bet game in the side story. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of avenues they could take this in. I think there is... I was actually really glad that we didn't spend too much emphasis on, because I'm still kind of leery if I'm going to like this much... I guess, attention to this topic. Depending on how they woven it, maybe it'll affect my enjoyment. But the fact that we do have this other mystery also in the volume of the great hero Albert and his possible connection to Eyes. I think if they weave it in a way where Belle is learning more about the details of this hero, and maybe in turn he learns stuff about the dragon that's going to tie into the end of the series. This would be a really cool time after we get done with the initial conflict. Like you said, maybe there's some downtime where like Belle's got to go on the run for a couple years. He's got to stay in hiding. Maybe he's doing that in the spare time. That might be cool, seeing a little bit of that play in if we're building towards a finale pretty soon. I just kind of am leery about how much they're going to like have Eyes as a focus of that and how much that might tie into the ending. But I have a feeling, since the author does have still like a special place in his heart for Eyes, that she's going to play a role in some way. I'm just curious to see how much of that is going to be intriguing versus actually enjoyable. But I do think I'm a little like shaken though, because the author says the last boss is closing in. So I'm really curious to know what exactly what intent that's supposed to be spilling. If that means the last for the series, the last for, the few books to come. Is this the last god he's going against? Like what, But everything will soon be revealed. And when I say soon, I mean like probably 5 years when the book actually drops in English. Yeah, when I'm 40 years old, let me know. Maybe I'll learn Japanese by then. Who knows? That's probably not true. But, so that was our speculation for Volume 17. Wow, it's good to say that.
Yeah.
We really both enjoyed Volume 16. If you have any questions or theories that aren't canon or spoilers for Volume 17, please feel free to put that in the comments. How did you feel about Syr being Freya. How do you think that's going to affect the next volume? And do you think Belle's kind of interpretation of what love is and what relationships will be, was that something that you're surprised about or excited about, or are you more happy with more traditional interpretations of that and other stories? So with that, I think that's pretty much everything we had to talk about. Any last things you want to cover?
Nope. I think we covered a good amount of ground today. I'm sure we'll be back for another one of these as the next volume release approaches. But other than that, put all that stuff down below, because like we teased in the other video, the rapid fire is coming out hopefully soon, and we're going to try to do some other Danmachi stuff, keep it alive, and hopefully we're going to have some other book stuff. I think there's a show we're also going to touch on, so stay tuned for that. We'll try to be back relatively soon, but until then, guys, I guess we'll say peace for now.
Later.